Welcome to our posts today. We will see stories of r/Pettyrevenge. Neighbor is a complete butthole to me and his own family, so I do little annoying things. First, he yells at his family, screams and throws stuff. Threatens his 4-year-old daughter who yells back. He's not hit them as far as I know. He does workouts outside on gym equipment that is not meant to be outside. It's rusting. When I see him out there, he does sexual gestures and motions and smirks at me. I avoid being visible to him just because of it. He has his friends over to watch football, and because the driveway is steep, his friends park outside his house and block us in. So I went out there with seed and threw it all over his friends' cars. I'm in Australia and lots of cockatoos and gallas come and crap where they eat. He drinks and has his music playing till 3 a.m. So while they have their hangover morning, wife and kids aren't home at 6 a.m., I point my speakers at his house and turn on the high-pitched dog whistle app just enough to hear it. I heard them yelling, "What's that ringing noise, F?" They start screaming and leave with their crap-covered cars. Next story. Dumb boss cut my hours and lost his job. Thank you 57 for the grammatically correct edit of my post. So, from the age of 16 to 20, I worked at a 24-hour fast food joint. After having worked there for so long, I was very good at what I did, to the point I could handle the entire store by myself as long as I needed, with little to no drops in customer satisfaction or speed. When I was 19, my grandfather got sick, which was really hard because I loved him to bits. My boss and I were close, so we worked out a deal where he would schedule me a ton, and I would essentially be on call for any time he needed someone to cover a shift. I would also work a straight 24-hour shift on Monday, busiest day. Being alone for 8 hours of it, these piled on hours resulted in me getting around 10-15 hours of overtime per week, sometimes more. This actually saved him money, because one guy working for $17 an hour at time and a half was cheaper than paying 3 guys $15 an hour to do the same work, allowing him to make way bigger profits. This allowed him more leeway and rep with corporate, meaning he would get bigger bonuses, and he could give me a raise after around 6 months, citing how well I worked. The other part was that I got a week off a month to visit my grandfather and assist him with his care or anything else I needed, while the extra money allowed for me to help pay for his treatment. Our agreement went on for a year before he was promoted to regional manager, which was a big jump. He got the raise cause our store was making like 15% more than the next highest performer while being in a less traveled area. The new manager who took over for him was a piece of crap. My manager told him of our deal and he scoffed and said it was dumb cause of how much overtime he would be paying me. My boss just shrugged cause, even if the store's performance dropped, he would just look even better, and so my hours were lowered to like 30 a week. Yet he was still calling me in and scheduling me for solo 8 hours and full 24-hour shifts, so I was working crap hours but getting paid less. He also stopped the week off a month, so I couldn't see my grandfather. So I quit, and he soon realized how effed he was. As I heard from my boss, the store's profits dropped to 15% lower than the next lowest store in the region rather than district, and the new GM was shortly fired for somehow dropping 125% in profits, and the guy tried to blame me for quitting. Nothing fancy, I just put in my 2-week notice, but I thought it was funny. Next story. Revenge at the playground. I was just a spectator for this, but it gave me such a revenge high that I wanted to share it. We are sitting at the ball field watching our kids play softball, and as what happens at every field complex in America, the younger kids are playing on the playground. The 6-7-year-olds are playing some form of dodgeball, but I can't understand the rules. All I know is they are having a blast. They aren't hurting each other, and all the parents can just watch the game in peace while everyone is having a good time. About halfway through the game, a kid around 10 shows up and wants to play too. They let him because they are having fun, and the little turd starts hitting the kids way too hard for their age. He is just beaning them. After the third kid is knocked over by this brat, a parent gets up. comes over to the playground and asks the kid if he could chill a little. The kids are much younger than him and he's hurting them. The little brat says, "It's just the rules of the game. If your kid doesn't want to get hurt, he shouldn't play." I was half thinking this kid was about to get an earful from this mother or she would stop her kid from playing. Instead, she just says okay, turns, walks back to her seat and whispers something in the kid ear that is sitting next to her playing on his tablet. The kid, without hesitating, stands up and says, "Hey, can I play?" The little kids are a little weary because the last kid they invited to play started hurting them. But the kid's little brother said yes. The kid came over. He couldn't have been much older than the brat who had come over earlier. Maybe a year older or so. Like one might have been 10, the other 11 or 12. They started playing, and the minute the brat had beamed another kid really hard, the older boy says, "Hey, can you cool it a little? We don't want to hurt the little kids." The brat answered, "Shut up and play. It's part of the game." The 12-year-old just said, "Okay." A second later, you hear the loudest smash of the ball. Every parent turned around and the brat is prone on the ground with his face in the dirt. The other kid is just standing up from his throwing motion. The prone brat stands up and has dirt down his face where he got knocked over, and he is starting to cry. He takes off running. About 3 minutes later, the kid's mother comes back with the brat and starts asking for the 12-year-old's parents. The mother said, "That would be me. Your kid hit my kid so hard he left a mark. Look," she said as she pulls up his shirt to show her. The mother just said, "Those are the rules of the game. If he doesn't want to get hit, he shouldn't play." The mother of the brat is furious. "Your son is an all-star pitcher. He could have killed my son." The mother of the pitcher says, "My son is an all-star pitcher with outstanding control. He hit your son exactly where he wanted to." The other mother tried to come back, but the other parents and the kids started telling her how her son was starting it by hitting the little kids. After that, it got into a shouting match, and the league commissioner had to come break it up. The brat and the mother eventually left, and about 5 minutes later, the mother bought an ice cream for her all-star pitcher. Next story. I bought the property he wanted. He was a jerk about it. The backstory. Here in Sweden, there is a huge difference in house prices between popular areas and major cities compared to the countryside. This meant that I was able to buy a small fixer-upper house at the age of 23-4 years ago on a very average income. There was only me and one other bidder involved, and I eventually won the bidding at a reasonable price. The house is located a bit outside town with only one other house next to it, as well as an empty lot. Shortly after moving in, an older guy came knocking on my door. He told me he was the other bidder and the owner of the empty property, and he only wanted my house in order to tear it down and make more space for his friend's RVs. He finished by essentially saying, "Enjoy your pile of junk." Since then, he has spent most of the summers in a lawn chair next to his RV on the empty property, with a clear view up my driveway and shooting me dirty looks every time I walked or drove by. Now, as I said, the house is a project, and I've made many improvements over the years as time and money has allowed. There is always something that needs doing on the house, and I'm also the designated mechanic for friends and family. There is usually a car or two getting repaired in my garage. This means lots of noisy tools. I've made sure to always start some kind of project when I see him sit down in his chair. This has gone on for a few summers now. He gives me dirty looks. I make noise. Only on reasonable hours, though. I don't do anything he can reasonably complain about. Today, I continued on my bedroom remodeling, and it seems my circular saw finally broke him. He turned his RV around and put the chair in the opposite direction, where there is an actual view as compared to my driveway. I see this as a total victory. Next story. Attempt gift swapping. Get humiliated. Today was my nephew's 13th birthday, and was the day I finally got back at my Sil for her antics. Sil has had a habit of swapping name tags on the gifts with her cheap, last-minute finds, since the gifts were opened when the extended guests had left. She had been successful with a gift I sent over when I was out of town and couldn't attend my nephew's birthday a few years ago, and thought she might try to pull her usual trick. So, I got my neighbor in on this, gave him a box with bright yellow wrapping, and asked him to brag about how he got lucky in finding this super rare Star Wars Lego set while Syl stood near, knowing the gifts will be opened later when he'd had left. As expected, Syl decided to generously help set up the gifts and the decorations. I caught her eyeing the box with the yellow wrapping, and before long, she accidentally knocked over a few, quickly swapping the tags. After the party, nephew eagerly tore into the presents. The look on Syl's face made me wish we had some reality TV cameras set up for this. When nephew opened the box with the bright yellow wrapping with her name on it, out came a few packs of cigarettes and a box of contraceptives, with a post-it note reading, "HB, you're a man now." Syl was speechless, and so were the rest of the family. She tried to play it off as a prank and that she wanted nephew to be prepared for adulthood. She was red as a ripe tomato the rest of the night. Edit. A lot of you are asking about how Syl never got caught. Nobody ever found out that she swapped gifts, since she targeted people who were not present at the time of opening. My suspicions only started when it happened to me. I did talk to her when I found about the gift I sent over a few years ago, but she brushed it off as a mistake while arranging the presents. Next story. Didn't get paid from a painter from Craigslist, so I set my computer to auto-dial his phone for 3 days. Years ago, when there was only flip phones, I worked for a week for this guy off Craigslist. 8 or 10-hour days for 7 straight days. He dropped off $37 at my house with a nasty note saying I was a crappy painter and didn't even deserve the $37. I can't remember my hourly rate, but I know it was more than a few cents an hour. So this dude had mentioned he had arguments with his girlfriend about constantly calling and leaving messages because he would still incur a charge. So my buddy had a PC with a modem and set it up to dial the guy's phone for 3 straight days and leave a message for 2 seconds and hang up, then redial. I wish I knew what his bill was by the end. Next story. Lie to get us to watch your kids? I can play dirty, and so can your children. Also features weaponized baked goods. The backstory is that I have an annoying cousin Louise Acapulco-covered Lou, who is heavily into competitive child raising, and off-roading her 4WD in my front garden. She's no longer allowed on our property. I don't speak directly to Lou anymore, but I do speak to her mum Auntie Dot, and my fiancé, Martin, is friends with Lou's husband Mike. I don't work on Thursdays, so I was still getting dressed when I heard a car and some voices. My cat sprinted off the bed and hid in the bathroom about a nanosecond before my cousin's Wonder Kids 8M and 6F burst in. I have no idea why they weren't at school. My fiancé was just behind them, looking a bit panicked, very unusual state for him. Apparently Louise had to take Auntie Dot to the hospital and urgently needed someone to look after the kids. Martin, being the compassionate soul that he is, agreed. So we spent the morning looking after the Wonder Kids and our own Vampira, nearly 2F, and she vants to gnaw your broccoli. Just after lunch, healthy and nutritious, Martin tried ringing Lou to get a progress report. No answer. No biggie, they were in a hospital. But he thought he'd try ringing Lou's husband Mike to see if he'd heard anything. Turned out Mike had no idea the kids were with us. They were supposed to be with his mum. The hospital visit was an outpatient clinic for Louise, not an urgent trip for Auntie Dot as implied. Auntie Dot was there for moral support. Mike offered to come and collect the Wonder Kids, but since he's self-employed and was working on a site about 2 hours away, we agreed to keep the Wonder Kids for the rest of the day. Mike rang back and said Louise would collect the kids at 5 p.m. I was fuming. Poo-covered Lou had lied and taken advantage and managed to worm her way back in. So I decided to play dirty. Literally. I took the Wonder Kids for a walk to the park, while Martin took our youngest to do some shopping. It was a nice winter's day, and the kids ran around, fell over, climbed on all the play equipment, jumped in all the muddy puddles, and found a heap of treasures and put them in their pockets to show their mum. We did wash faces and hands afterwards, and clean shoes as best we could, but Lou hadn't provided a change of clothing. So by the time she arrived at 6 p.m. on time for her, the Wonder Kids were tired, happy, hungry, and absolutely filthy and keen to show off their treasures. Louise, on the other hand, was not happy, and made the Wonder Kids leave their treasures on the nature strip, dirtying their hands again. Then, when the kids were strapped into their car seats, it was time to enact the final part of my petty revenge. Martin produced the shopping I'd asked him to get, and gave them a paper bag each. I explained they were a little treat for the journey home, to tide them over. Inside each bag was a sweet bun, known in our house as instant diabetes. They are filled with strawberry jam, iced with gooey pink icing, and liberally dusted with desiccated coconut. According to my dad, by the time they reached home, the Wonder Kids were covered in jam and icing as well as dirt, and they didn't want dinner. My kids ate their veggies. The back seat of Lou's car was also covered in dirty, sticky fingerprints and coconut. Apparently Lou's not happy, and even though she's vacuumed, she's still finding little shreds of coconut in the back seat. And oh dearie me, so sad, we're never allowed to look after her kids ever again. Ever. Next story. Manager made me share my calendar details, so I deleted everything except meetings and holidays. Today, my micromanager came to my desk and made me give her access to my calendar so that she could see full details of every Outlook appointment. Of course, I complied. After she walked away, I deleted all of the tasks I've ever entered to make sure I'm blocking off time to accomplish my work during normal business hours, and created a new calendar that I will use to document what I'm working on and how long it takes me to do so. I did leave team meetings, paid holidays, and 2 on the calendar she made me share with her. Hopefully it's not too obvious that I won't be using it in the way she believes will allow her to see how I'm scheduling my workflow. I am salaried and am very diligent about getting things done between the hours of 8-5 so that I don't get effed into working on nights and weekends. She has had to pick up work from other project managers whose workloads were too much for them to handle. I believe she's either trying to justify firing me or assigning me other people's work. Now my calendar won't reflect my day-to-day tasks, so she won't know for sure what I'm working on until we run monthly reporting. I have to track my time in our software and meet a KPM of 80% tracked to a project each month. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share, and subscribe the channel. Our posts